Welcome everybody to the 2022 State of Texting Report from TextUs. Thank you for joining. Really glad to have you guys. I'll be presenting here. I'm the CEO with partner in crime, Maggie. And we'll just get right underway here. First of all, there's a fair number of folks on the webinar here that are new to TextUs. And so wanted to provide an introduction to TextUs, but I think more importantly, we also want to use the introduction as a way to set context for the data that you're about to see, because a lot of the data is our data that we've mined. And I think it's important that you know where the data comes from so that you know how to interpret it. So first of all, here at TextUs, we allow organizations to have truly engaging conversations with their stakeholders across the entire journey. And our focus here is really helping our users improve conversion and retention. And stakeholders can be anyone from prospects and consumers that you interact with, or if you're in the recruiting and staffing world, you're looking at candidates, contractors, and employees. And our positioning here is we provide you with software that enables users to have the most effective message-based campaigns and conversations in the market. And we place an emphasis on effective because we just want to enable our users to do the best possible jobs, have the best possible campaigns and conversations that you can. It's actually pretty easy to enable you to send out more messages. But more can be good in certain contexts, but more often than not, everyone wants to be better at their jobs, have higher productivity. And so we really tend to focus on just helping you be smarter, helping you be more effective in your roles. And so this includes engagement across the full stakeholder life cycle. So that's why it's both campaigns, which tend to get used a little bit more upfront, to improve reach, as well as conversations, which tend to be more one-to-one. TextUs also directly integrates with or gets embedded in your system of record. And so as you look through the data, know that we're talking about sales and marketing use cases, as well as staffing and recruiting use cases, really across the whole stakeholder journey. So it's fairly encompassing. Data that might come from other texting companies that play more top of funnel, it's important to understand that because, like I said, the insights that are derived from the data, you ought to know where the data comes from. So business challenges and opportunities in 2022. So this more or less is a synthesis, I think, of what most of us see in the news. So in 2022, a lot of talk about recruiting and labor shortages. The great resignation of 2021 has helped fuel some of the labor shortages that we see in 2022. There's supply chain and distribution efficiency that is being sought, heavily sought, because of all the blockages and the shortages that we see in our supply chain, our global supply chain that affects us here domestically. And so any way that we can be more efficient with supply chain and distribution, customers are going to be looking for. Distributed mobile workforce management. COVID, I think, has probably changed the workplace, at least for the medium term, maybe even the long term, maybe forever. And so we're seeing much more distributed workforces that need to be managed in some kind of a hybrid environment where sometimes you come in the office, sometimes you're not in the office, and a premium is placed on just being able to reach employees and the workforce wherever they are. And the workforce is becoming increasingly mobile. And so even if you can predict where that person's going to be in terms of what site or workplace they're going to be, they're always on the go. Like nurses, for example, we get used with nurses a lot. Nurses are always on the go. They're not at their desk. And so even when you can't predict where that nurse is going to be, the fact that they're highly mobile means that you got to reach them when they're on their phone. Housing and hospitality. So there's after being held in your home and being limited in terms of where you can go, there's a great surge in terms of movement. People want to live in different places, work from different places, work from places that are have pleasant scenery, pleasant extracurricular activities, and there's a surge with hospitality as well. Sports and event marketing, folks are going back big time to events, concerts, ball games, what have you. And then we're already starting, we do a little bit of work on the political side of things, and our political customers are already gearing up for the next election cycle. So a lot of need and a lot of opportunity out there, particularly for text-based communication out there in 2022. So texting's place in your tech stack. So it can be the most frequent mode of interaction and engagement for marketing and selling to consumers. We'll talk a little bit about this later, but when there's some degree of interaction and coordination required, texting tends to be the medium of choice for a lot of these use cases, because it's just so, you can get the message across in a timely fashion, but it's not as time consuming as, say, a phone call. Recruiting of candidates, when there's a full-time or contract position available, and managing staff when there's a large volume of shifts or jobs that need to be filled in timely fashion. And texting typically will integrate with the systems that keep track of your consumers, of your candidates, and of your staff. That said, it's complementary to these systems, obviously, but it's also complementary to email, phone, and chat. So texting is really not about replacing these communication tools that you have. It's really about adding something to your tech stack that really allows you, when the time is right in that stakeholder's life cycle, to really engage in timely, quick fashion with those stakeholders. So macro trends and user behavior that favor texting. So texting is a more personal medium, and it actually will remain so, just based on what we see in the industry and also with regulation. So texting volume is still only 11% of emails, depending on whose estimate you believe, but it's roughly an order of magnitude or more less used than email. And so if you use texting today, or you are looking at adopting texting, the macro trends favor you, because most other folks just don't use it. And so if you're using texting and you're using it well, there's a really good chance that you're going to stand out and you're going to grab somebody's attention just by sheer volume of email versus texting. A part of that lower usage of texting, it also results in less spam, a lot less spam, versus about 50% for emails. The other thing I'll mention here, though, is the laws that govern spamming in both email and text. Completely different legal rules that apply. I mean, if I speak plainly, you can get away, quote unquote, with spamming an email. There are allowances that are made, which, no surprise, which is why you see more spam in email. Texting falls under telecommunications regulation, and it's much more tightly regulated. And therefore, there are actually the probability of you getting into hot water because you fall outside of those lines are higher, because the regulations are tighter. And so as a result of that, you actually see much better behavior in texting than you do in email. And then on top of that, the mobile carriers actually do quite a good job of making sure that we have folks in texting that are using texting well. And because of that, texting will remain, we believe, a really viable, highly effective communications medium into the future. And we won't see the spamminess, the degree of spamminess that we see with emails. Texting is also just a better engagement medium. So SMS is a live medium, so people, when they receive a text from somebody, they expect another live human being to be on the other end of that. And so that expectation in and of itself just, I think leads to, a sense of anticipation, a willingness to read a text, a willingness to respond to a text, just by the social expectation that we've set as a society on SMS. So as a result, about 98% of SMS messages are read, compared to about 20% of emails. Another factor is ease of use. I mean, it just takes minutes to respond to a text because it's very short format, versus typically hours for email. And then SMS messages tend to have a much higher response rate than email as well. And again, it's not so much that email, you do texting in lieu of email. Email still is great for longer form messaging that isn't as frequent. So email certainly still has its place. For texting, its place tends to be more timely engagement with the stakeholder that you're trying to communicate with.
Yeah, I might add to that just as some color commentary. There's this degree of, kind of mental fortitude it takes to not clear your notifications on your phone. So like if most phones, you look at it, you have that little number on your text bubble, you want to respond to that right away. It's a lot more difficult for someone to actually go through and delete a text or not respond to it when they have that notification bubble there. So there's this kind of psychological piece where I think people just want to get through those notifications on their texts, whether that's responding quickly or just acknowledging that they've read that. So I'm, as a text recipient, definitely guilty of that, where I'd sooner just answer it right away rather than just let it sit there all day.
Totally true. Same with me as well. So stated texting. So what was our research methodology here? So we've got couple thousand customers, more than, and so we got roughly 10% of our customer base. Thank you, customers that responded. A 10% sampling of our customer base is great. So about 250 customers across a variety of industries. Basically gave us information and insights on how text messaging impacted their business in 2021. And then we also supplemented our research with data points that we pulled from, millions, to use a more technical term, gobs of text messages that were sent across our platform in 2021. We use that data to glean trends that you're going to see and insights that you're going to see throughout the rest of the presentation. So SMS, from a market standpoint, was about a $5 billion market in 2020. And what we're talking about there is the use of texting software by businesses to communicate with candidates, with employees, with consumers. That, generally speaking, is what's represented in the $5 billion market there. It includes things like mass notifications, for texting, where the use case is, you've got to do like two-factor authentication, some kind of a security notification. So most of it in one way, but it also includes all of the communication that tends to be back and forth, one-to-one, as well. So it's all encompassing in that $5 billion. It's projected to grow at a compounded annual rate of about 20%, maybe slightly more, to reach 24 billion by 2028. So that's reflective of the fact that there's a ton of headroom, right? Because texting is only at about 10% the volume of email. So there's just a tremendous amount of headroom to grow given where we're at as a total market today. So TextUs usage in 2021. So no surprise to see that with a healthy growth rate that you see in the macro market, what we see at TextUs, quarter over quarter, as you can see there, is also a very healthy growth rate in terms of the volume of texts that go through our system. And these numbers, what they reflect here, like take Q4, for example, those are 56 million messages per month in Q4. And so a lot of volume growth that we saw through our platform over the course of the year. And that was in both conversational and campaigns. Remember, we cover both use cases, and we saw commensurate growth rates, both in conversational and campaign use cases. So communicating effectively, the metrics that I shared with you before, I should have covered this earlier, but the context there is that was as a market as a whole, some of those metrics that I shared with you earlier. Obviously, these metrics come from our data. And so in our data, basically our users confirm what we see on them in the macro trends, but more specifically, they state that texting is also the most effective communication channel for your business, to the tune of about 55%. We have a healthy base of recruiters and staffing as well that still, I mean, the phone and voice is extremely important as part of their communications mix. And so about 27.5% say that phone is the most effective communication channel there, and then email rounds out the third one there at about 17%. The other interesting insight here is that texting gets used by our users to the tune of 64% of users use texting multiple times per day. Not a surprise there, because if you are a texter, that tends to be the usage models. You go to it multiple times per day. And we'll see a little bit later too that the people who receive texts also have the same usage pattern where it's multiple times per day. But we have a large number of our users that are using it that heavily.
Yeah, and I think oftentimes what we see too is, as it's part of this kind of full communication strategy, it's not just texting or phone or email, but texting might be used to support things that are coming through via phone or email. So saying, hey, put that I-9 form in your inbox, check it out when you have a chance. Or, hey, I left you a voicemail, I have a few questions that I need to get answered, let me know when you have time to talk. So it's not only, it doesn't just stand alone in that way, it really does support those other methods. And that's why we see multiple times a day it's being used. If you need a quick answer, it's being used. But it also is nice if you have more information to disseminate, to use that to just support those communication methods and get in front of people a little bit quicker.
Texting response rates. I was actually pretty surprised to see this level of spread and variability across industries. So overall, if you look at more the macro data across really all texting platforms, I mean, you see about a 35% response rate, like 35 to 40 is usually what I quote. TextUs users average upwards of 60%, 61% to be exact. And the spread across industries is really interesting here. Financial services, apparently, if you're receiving a text from your financial services company, people really perk up and pay attention. I mean, the response rate there is really, really high. It's extraordinary, honestly, at 83%. Hospitals and healthcare is at about 56%. Staffing is kind of, straight down the middle of the fairway there, about 45%. Same with real estate. And then schools and education sits at about 38%. And it's no knock on schools and education. I mean, 38% is still a really high response rate. It's perhaps a little bit more reflective of the competition that's out there in terms of schools vying for prospective students. But overall, a fair amount of spread, but overall still quite high relative to other communications media out there. So a deeper look at response rate. This is one of the things that I'll share is just anecdotally speaking, we, as you might imagine, are a very, very insights-led company. And we have to be, because our mission is really to enable our users and customers to be more effective. And the way to be more effective is to actually study what you do so that we're smarter, and then we can share insights that help our customers be more effective in what they do. Some of those insights get baked into the platform itself. Some of those insights we actually just share verbally with our customers. And so we get together regularly. You get a dedicated account manager. We literally will take our customers through reviews of their usage patterns and make recommendations on where we see opportunities for improvement. And I tell you all this because this comes up all the time. like message length. There's such a strong correlation between, it's actually an inverse correlation between message length and response rate. So the shorter the message, the higher the response rate. Probably not a surprise. There's a famous guy out there that says, give me more time and I'll write you a shorter letter. The reason why, that person said that is because a shorter letter is just more likely to be read and consumed by the person that you send it to. It is totally true in texting. But what's interesting is not that, as you get longer messages, you get a shorter or a lower response rate. It's really the magnitude of the difference. If you just kind of roughly say that keeping your messages to 100 characters or less gets you, call it roughly a 70% response rate, that gets cut by more than in half if you go over 100 on average. We'll show you some industry breakdowns on this as well, because there's variation by industry, but as a general rule of thumb, we really like to train and help our users understand this really well, so that right out of the chute, they're not copying and pasting an email into their text. I mean, that's a recipe to get down to the really low response rates, because typically those emails tend to be 200 characters or above. So really important insight, and it's something that we really like to share and help our customers with is we talk to them about how to best use the platform.
Yeah, you make a good point about not, kind of regurgitating what you're seeing in email or voicemail. And again, that just goes back to this being something that's layered into your communication strategy. It doesn't necessarily solely represent the way you communicate with folks on the other end, but can very easily, take the high level highlights out of that email, drop them into a text, and you're more likely to get the response that you're looking for a lot quicker.
Yeah, and demographics certainly play a role here too. I mean, if you're working with younger demographics, like with me and my kids, for example, if I were to pop them an email into a text, it would like make their eyes bleed. I mean, they just it does not resonate with them at all. But if I'm concise with my kids, I do get a response.
Yeah. Everyone's opened their phone to that really long text bubble, and you're like, it's jarring to say the least. So totally get
Now,
that.
I mean, so that's a really good rule of thumb, right? Shorter is significantly better when it comes to texting. Now, if you look at this by industry, there is variation by industry, and the one that jumps out here, or maybe the two that jump out, is financial services. I mean, so there's probably not just tolerance, but there's probably a bit of expectation that when the use case is some kind of a financial service, there tends to be a fair amount of information that gets conveyed between sender and recipient. And so the expectation here is that, with more information, the messages get longer. And so you don't actually see as much of a drop off in response rate with message length. You do see some drop off though. And it's kind of a similar trend for staffing, because you're communicating either about a new position that's come available, or you're communicating about a shift that needs to be taken. So inherently, those conversations just tend to pack a bit more information in them. If you look at the others, though, you look at healthcare, you look at real estate, you look at education, there is a steeper fall off there in response rate as it relates to message length. So, abide by the general rule of thumb, but there's also leeway for you in terms of use case to factor into message length as well. Next topic is texting response time. So we'll look at day of the week here. The first thing we'll point out, to put a finer point on the earlier comment that was made about texting responses in minutes and email responses is measured in hours. Specifically in the TextUs platform, we're seeing on average, 12 minutes to respond to a text, which is pretty fast, right? There is some variation that we see on day of the week. And it's kind of intuitive. And so the response time that you'll see in the beginning of the week is and the weekends tends to be a bit longer, and it probably makes sense. I mean, you're getting through your inbox, you're working through to-dos in the first half of the week. And so when you get to Thursday, Friday, meeting calendars tend to clear up, inboxes tend to clear up, and you get a little bit more time to be responsive to things. And so Thursday and Friday tend to be the best days there when it comes to actual response time. The other interesting insight that we like to share with our customers, as well as those that are considering using texting for the first time, is the hour. If you look at messages sent and responded to by hour of the day, which this data entails, this just proves that people on their phone, they're literally on their phone responding to text or sending text hour by hour, probably, maybe even down to the minute. And so you can see, starting at the beginning of the day at about 8 o'clock, it's a little hard to read, but you see about 8% of total text for the day gets sent at 8. It climbs up to almost 10% by 9, and then it reaches a peak of about 11%, just under 11% at 10. And it holds fairly steady throughout the primary working hours of the day, from 10 to about 3. And then starting at 4, you get down to about 7%. And then there's a fall off, once people are done with their workday. And so this is just empirical data that when you send a text, people will read it throughout the day. And this is the view on messages received by hour of the day as well. So very similar distribution there. The peaks there between 10 and 3. Those are the prime hours, with some drop off there at the beginning of the day and towards the end of the day. So some predictions for 2022. A desire for uninterrupted workflows will drive additions to companies' tech stacks. So you want to look for solutions that will integrate with current workflows and business systems. We see that more and more. There's some of our customers that will look to use texting as a standalone solution, but we see increasing requests and increasing usage to have tight integration between the TextUs platform and whatever system of record they're using, like a CRM system or an applicant tracking system or an HR system. And they want that contact data to be shared between those two systems. They want opt-outs to be passed from TextUs into the system of record. They want notes to be captured, like messages that were actually sent to and from contacts, to be posted back to the system of record. So that system of record has a comprehensive view of not just text messages, but emails and phone calls as well. There's a holistic record of various conversation over various media that occur in those systems of record. And increasingly so, that's what customers are looking for. The user experience is key. Just like keeping your messages short and simple, it's analogous to keep the user experience with your texting platform super straightforward, easy to use, so that people will use it and therefore take advantage of the higher response rates and higher engagement that they get. We see this at TextUs. We've got a lot of innovation that's coming down the pike, and we've got to balance that with our first principle of how do we make the innovation really easy to use so that all users can use it. I think, is a crutch. Sometimes technology companies will just say, hey, we'll leave it to the admin, we'll leave it to the power user. They'll figure out how to set it up and configure it so that everyone else can use. Our mission is to actually alleviate the admin and power user of that duty. And really take a hard look at how do we make this natively usable and easy right out of the chute, so that you know, the admin is not overloaded with work or become the bottleneck for using something that's a cool new feature. Speed and convenience is huge here. With the trends that we pointed out earlier, those are all trends that really rely on timely communications. And so speed and convenience, super important when you're talking about texting. You know, 10DLC, if your current users of texting, allows you to, one of the benefits of 10DLC, which are improvements that the mobile carriers have made to limit spam, but they've also made them to actually increase deliverability and to increase throughput. And so you want to, you know, as part of this timeliness of texting, you really want to look for a platform that allows you to absolutely go at your peak throughput that is allowed by the mobile carrier. And that's something that these are things that we pay attention to here at TextUs, because we know it's important, and you know, we want to make sure that you're maximizing the timeliness there.
Yeah, I might add on the prediction slide, you know, we get a lot of customers that come to us that they're already texting, but they're doing it from their own phones, you know. So it's not so much that we feel like, you know, texting is going to have this renaissance era next year. Like, people are already doing it. They're already finding ways to utilize texting, but they may be doing it in a way that, you know, we talk about workflows, we talk about speed and convenience, you know, as their workload increases and the volume of communication that they have to do increases, like doing this type of texting from a personal phone just becomes really cumbersome. It's particularly hard to follow, you know, those notes, whether it relates to a candidate record or a customer, especially if you have, you know, turnover within your own organization. You know, by housing all of that in a central place, not only are, you know, you're communicating more effectively, of course, but, you know, the record of those conversations is not limited to that person's cell phone. So, you know, we have a lot of conversations now where we're not necessarily trying to convince people why texting is great. Like, they already know that, they do it every day. You know, they're using their phones personally and professionally to do that. And so it's, how can you kind of harness that in a way that's actually going to make you better and more efficient with your workflow. And that's, you know, what we see a lot, particularly when customers come to TextUs or another texting platform, is that it's kind of all right there integrated with what they're doing day to day already.
So to summarize, before we get to Q&A here, texting is a great unifier. It's used across many industries, across different departments. We oftentimes see when a company decides to use texting, we'll see the marketing department use it for top of funnel. And those top of funnel communications, when they convert, will convert over into a salesperson or a recruiter or a like function for a one-to-one conversation. And then once the recruiter or salesperson actually, you know, closes whatever transaction they're working on, we'll also see it be picked up by an operational group or a customer service group to continue the relationship either with that consumer or that candidate. And so it's just a great tool to add to your communications mix, whether you're in HR, marketing, sales, staffing, or recruiting. We've just seen it be so effective across the various verticals and use cases. And as you can see in some of the data and insights that we share, we do see great engagement across those verticals, despite the use case differential there. You know, and texting's not going away. It's no longer a nice to have. It's no longer something novel. It is a need to have. And so our customers, particularly our customers, when they make the decision to integrate it with their system of record, with their workflow, it just becomes a core part of their operations and what they do. It truly becomes a need to have. And, you know, we collected some verbatims from the respondents to our survey. We've got one there at the bottom that we like in particular. I love TextUs and more broadly texting. People have less anxiety answering text. They rarely answer a phone call anymore. So with that, we will open it to Q&A.
We have a few coming in. Do you want me to read these, Martin, or can you see them too?
I can see them.
Okay.
First one from Scott. Are there any plans to integrate with education systems like Banner, Canvas, EAB Navigate, etc.? The general answer, Scott, is definitely yes. We actually get these requests a lot, and not just for education, but for other verticals as well. We've with people going back to events and ball games, like we get requests, for example, to integrate with event specific CRM systems as well. And we're in the middle of augmenting our integration capabilities so that we can actually have a capability to add integrations as they come in and get requested by customers more quickly. And so we'll have some more information to share in the near future here in terms of that capabilities, as well as the systems we will add integrations to is part of our enhanced integration capabilities. So Ken here asks a question. You mentioned that text assumes another human being on the other end of the conversation. How do you feel bots will change that expectation? Really good question. I think if you are very thoughtful, I think about the role that bots play, I think they actually can add a lot of value as part of message-based communications, and in this case, texting specifically. And so I think if there's a rote task to be done, for example, like scheduling, let's just say you want to schedule an appointment or you want to schedule an interview, I think a rote task like that, people find a bot to be acceptable there. But when it comes to meaningful, more meaningful dialogue that needs to be personalized, I think the trick there is to carefully think through how you want that journey to go for your consumer, your candidate, so that when we call it a human intercept here at TextUs, so that you're just really thoughtful about when the human needs to come in, your user needs to come in to intercept that conversation and to augment the conversation with a live human. And so I think that's the key, is how do you want that journey to look? Therefore, that should lead to how you curate the conversation and when those points of human intercept need to happen. But I think if it's done well, I think, bots plus human interaction done well actually leads to enhanced productivity for your users. So overall, a good thing. So Lance asks, Lance in recruiting, by the way, so he's curious what platforms ATS already has APIs with. We use UKG. So there's a list on our website, Lance, and some of the bigger ones that we integrate with are Bullhorn in the various flavors of Bullhorn. And so Bullhorn's got like 5 flavors. We integrate with Greenhouse, we integrate with Workday, we integrate with Taleo, as well as a couple of smaller ones. Over on the CRM side, our main one right now is Salesforce. We also have very, very good API. So for some of the smaller platforms that we can't get to, it's actually fairly straightforward. We have a lot of platforms that integrate with us as well. And so when we count the number of integrations, both the ones that we've written to, as well as those that are written to us, I believe it numbers over 100. And so there's actually quite a bit there. But really, for the full list where we write to that platform and support it, you can find that on our website. Mark asked a question about what gets you excited about what's coming to TextUs in terms of features this year. Really, really excited about Campaigns Pro. That's the one that was recently released. That allows additional features to the campaigns capability. So the ability to send rich media like imagery and files, the ability to send a registered link. If you're already users of texting and TextUs, you'll notice that with 10DLC, there's been added restrictions to sending unregistered links. There's a good chance that it's going to get blocked by certain carriers. We give you the ability to send a registered links, which really drives up deliverability and actually drives up response rate because people recognize the name in the registered link. We also allow you to do multivariate testing where you might be sending out a campaign and you want to send 3 variations of in essence, the same message. Maybe you want to vary the language a little bit. You want to vary the image. And then after the campaign's run, it'll tell you what the winner was in terms of response rates so that you know what responds based on that sample. You can promote it among your user base and say, hey guys, this was the winner. We should use, this campaign, this template going forward, just because the response rate was so much greater. Other things, in addition to additional integrations throughout the year, like I mentioned before, really excited about Analytics Pro. So Analytics Pro is coming out, and that's going to allow each user to look at information and basically learn on their own based on how they compare against their peers within the company, and in some cases with their peers in other industries, at other companies within the same industry as well. And so we're really excited about the ability there to provide insights to users that are easily consumable, that can give them guidance on just how to be a better texter. So that's Analytics Pro. Be on the lookout for that. The other thing to be out on the lookout for is just additional automations from us. So we automate campaigns today. We've got a couple of automation features there. We will soon have automations for keywords as well, that is unique and differentiated from what you see out there today in terms of the keyword functionality that's offered. We think this is, I think of it as like keyword automation 2.0. That's just going to be more flexible, more robust for our users to put to good use, as well as future automations in the second half of the year as well. So that's some stuff that you should be on the lookout for. And we'll be excited to share more specifics with you as we get line of sight to when those are delivered. So Kate asked, does TextUs integrate with Delphi and Salesforce used in the hospitality industry? Not right now, Kate, but I will tell you that we have had very similar requests to this. Like, for example, in healthcare, we have a customer right now that integrates, I forget what the name of it is, but there's a healthcare flavor of Salesforce that they required an integration to. We did some digging there, and as it turns out, the vertical specific flavors of Salesforce share a lot of commonality with the standard version of Salesforce. And so while I don't know Delphi specifically, please get in touch with us, and we can give you a pretty quick read on whether that's going to be, a short putt or a long putt. But if these other examples in history proves it shouldn't be, it should be closer to short putt, I would think, but we'll dig in and get you a specific answer there, if you get in touch with us. And then Lamb's got a question. Can we create specific folders to manage historic messages? No, that's a great suggestion though, Lamb. And it's actually something that our users have requested. It's a common feature request to allow more flexibility in terms of folder creation so that, individuals can define folders, that suit your specific needs in terms of how you want to manage them, whether they be present messages or historic messages. And that's all we have. Great questions, guys. Appreciate it. Helps make the webinar more interactive and more fun, frankly. Sure. Everyone, thank you so much for attending. It was great to have the number of folks here interested in learning about the state of texting. Thanks to the TextUs team that really did all the hard work in putting this together. We hope to see you soon. Have a great Thursday.
Thank you, everyone. We'll send a recording by end of day. And I also just dropped the link to the actual report download in the chat. So feel free to head to our website to grab that. We'll include it as well in the email follow-up that we'll send this afternoon. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.